Car launches are the most exciting part of a new F1 season, and there's a revolution coming. In 2025, F1 will host a collective launch featuring all 10 teams as part of the World Championship's 75th anniversary celebrations, and fans will be able to attend. This is going to be a huge departure from what came before, and if it works, could be transformative for how F1 kicks off its new season, what the fans are treated to, and what the media get out of it. All 10 teams will reveal their 2025 liveries at an evening event at the O2 Arena in London on February 18th in advance of pre-season testing in Bahrain, which begins on February 26th. Make sure you let us know in the comments what you think of this, as your view as fans should be the most important on something like this. Then you can come back next February too and tell us if you changed your mind. The event will last 2 hours and feature a mix of appearances from drivers and senior team figures and other entertainment aspects, with fans able to buy tickets to attend at the 20,000 capacity venue. Ticket prices will range from £58 to £113, and the event will also be broadcast live, although broadcast details are still to come, along with other information about the event in the coming weeks. Teams will almost certainly be using show cars with liveries because of the logistical reality of the event, with this being such a time-pressured part of the year, plus the 3 non-UK teams, Ferrari, RB and Sauber, needing to travel to take part. So this isn't going to be a flat-out everybody shows off their new cars in full reveal. Maybe that'll happen in the future, as we can easily see somewhere like Bahrain or Saudi Arabia paying for that privilege on the eve of testing one day. What it's going to tap into for now is the general intrigue around the new season, rather than the specifics of this car's new aerodynamic trick or that car's new suspension layout. It's about concentrating mass widespread attention on a huge-scale F1 event. F1's unsurprisingly very excited about what it's billing as an unprecedented world premiere. The show will be masterminded by Brian Burke, an Emmy-nominated creative specialist whose team was behind the opening and closing ceremonies for last year's Las Vegas Grand Prix. We were there for the Vegas opening ceremony, and while it was heavy on style, it also had some substance too. The key is to take these events for what they are. It's being seen as something of a free hit, tied to the 75th anniversary, which gives F1 the flexibility to adapt it for the future, drop it entirely, or find a way to get the teams and drivers to all commit to this as a regular occurrence. That last point will be critical, because right now it's being facilitated by everyone participating out of goodwill more than anything else, as we understand there's no regulatory or commercial rights agreement that can force this exact type of event. But that's a future worry for F1, so what does it really mean for 2025? Normally, F1 launch season runs across a couple of weeks, with teams taking different approaches, including releasing simple render images, having digital-only reveals, hosting their own launch events, and or supplementing these with images of the real car if a shakedown is also held. Some of this will still be possible, as additional solo launch activity would allow teams to engage more directly with media and fans if they want to, letting them further control their messaging for the season ahead and get more standalone attention. But the priority is for all 10 teams to save the liveries themselves for the collective launch. The livery reveals are always among the most attention-grabbing elements of launch season, so it's no surprise F1 really wants exclusivity on this. That means real car images will not be shared until the day of the event or after. The only alternative is if someone drops a bombshell and runs a shakedown in advance in a camouflage livery, which we can't rule out and would be very happy to see. This is a bold new approach by F1. It's one that, speaking selfishly, makes us a little nervous for what it might take away from a massive part of the year, but it is certainly interesting. And in the most simple sense, it's about time F1 at least tried something different. Doing something else with car launches has been mooted within F1 for a very long time. It's a running joke that for all the technology and ingenuity and money in this championship, nobody's found a better way to reveal a car than pulling off a sheet. Of course, the process has been modernised with a mix of digital and real-world events hosted by the teams themselves. There's clearly still value in taking the launches seriously, otherwise F1's biggest teams wouldn't do it. They know that they can still get a lot of attention by even doing a half-baked launch, but there's a certain standard that most try to hit. When done right, the launches tick a lot of boxes. Teams and partners get lots of coverage, we all see the new cars and liveries, and we hear from key team personnel and get our first impressions of how well prepared or not Team X is. As long as the collective F1 launch still satisfies the basic requirements by at least giving us a glimpse of the cars, even in render form, everybody will at least get something from it. But we'll probably be relying on some supplementary efforts from the teams as well, and that might depend on a bit of a mutual understanding that one single combined launch won't be enough. All 10 teams are believed to be supportive of F1's plan to recognise the 75th anniversary and the intention to try something new, hence being willing to sacrifice their own moment in the spotlight. That will inevitably be more relevant to smaller teams, as sharing a launch date means the bigger, more popular entries like McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes will get more attention. The argument is that other teams might take a hit in terms of individual glory, but in return they contribute to something that may have broader benefit for F1 overall. And it could mean a cheaper launch season for teams themselves that don't have to worry about organising their own event anymore, although exactly who pays for the collective launch and whether the teams need to make a contribution still seems to be up for discussion. Crucially, teams will still be able to offer a little more themselves, and we feel it's important that some of them actually take that up, otherwise what F1's giving up might be worth more than what a few people are gaining. Change has not always been for the better where car launches are concerned. The problem with modern reveals is they can tempt teams into appallingly low-effort digital launches that just feature a couple of lazy renders with the new livery and no supporting material. RB, we're looking at you. It's also possible that some teams lose sight of what a launch is for, look to satisfy themselves and their partners, and exclude fans and the media from being part of it. Yes, RB, we're still looking at you. When a launch goes really wrong, it ends up being an exclusive opulent PR fest for a select few and a low effort, unhelpful digital offering for the rest of us. And don't mistake that for sour grapes at not getting invited to a party. Our interest is not being front and centre at some shindig masquerading as a car launch. Like a lot of you watching, we just really want to see the new designs and the liveries and hear from the teams properly. So when we heard what F1's planning for 2025, we got a little nervous that it would be more of an awards ceremony meets concert mashup than a car or season launch, and that it could come at the cost of everything else that makes launch season fun, informative and rewarding. Instead of fans getting a drip feed of new cars and having something new to get excited about almost every day across a 2-week stretch, now it could just be one day of chaos and the rest of your February will be dull with nothing new to look at. That's the worst case scenario, and we still don't have an exact answer as to whether it will happen. Our understanding is that most teams do intend to add their own material into the mix, but we won't know until these teams confirm their plans or not. And there are still a lot of other questions too. As the combined launch will just be majoring on liveries, does that mean the real cars will stay hidden until testing? Will they all be obliged to show renders, and will that be all they reveal? Will anything be accurate or mean anything? There is a risk there that F1 subtracts the most impactful parts of car launches in their current form and leaves us with every team doing an RB by shortchanging us. As exciting and chaotic as it would be to not get a glimpse of the real 2025 cars until the first morning of testing, that could create a problem for F1 as well as fans. Turning 10 standalone launches into one isn't very Liberty Media, for whom the strategy of more equals more has been a cornerstone of its management of F1's commercial rights in the last few years. Does this mean that instead of 2 weeks of excitement and intrigue building up to testing and the full-scale revelation of what teams really have, the F1 launch footprint will be reduced to a few hours of razzmatazz and 10 teams fighting over the same spotlight? Is it going to be worth that sacrifice for the sake of a few more mainstream publications potentially picking up a few specific storylines? No doubt the first sight of Lewis Hamilton in Ferrari Red will grab the interest of some major places around the world, but it will come at a cost for everyone else. Ultimately, we're not about to start screaming, "Oh, won't somebody please think of the Saubers?" But actually, if you look at the response to our coverage of every team at the start of 2024, fans clearly do care, even about the lesser teams. That's the power of launch season and why it has to be maximised. If some teams make an effort to do their own thing as well, either with a carless season launch or something between the O2 event and pre-season testing, then maybe we'll all be getting the best of both worlds. But if that just means we only get carless season launches or a few shakedowns with limited imagery, it seems unlikely we'll get this new collective launch and the big individual effort most teams have typically gone through. And everyone loses out a little, including F1, if all the positives for an event they can sell tickets to, televise and appeal to partners with, ultimately don't beat what's being given up to facilitate it. That trade-off will be key to judging if this worked or if it didn't, and what's extra tricky is that as different stakeholders want to get different things from the launches, and that includes you the fans, satisfying everybody is going to be tough. Sometimes a fair compromise means leaving everyone a bit disappointed, but is that good enough around something as important as launch season? F1 will need to make a judgment on that when it comes to determining if this remains a one-off experiment or if it becomes a regular part of F1's schedule.